Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too.
I was 11 the year everything changed for my family. And even now, 12 years later, I still remember the exact smell of that damn place. The mix of fryer oil, burnt coffee, and cold winter air drifting through the cracked front door of our new rental home in a dying Midwestern town called Bramble Creek, the kind of town people forgot existed unless their car broke down on the interstate, the kind of town where the only places hiring were the grain elevator, the dollar zone, and the 24-hour McDonald's sitting right off Highway 27 like a glowing yellow beacon in the middle of nowhere. We'd moved there because my mom, Leah, had lost her housekeeping job in Omaha, and my stepdad, Ron, couldn't find anything steady. And when he finally landed a night janitor gig at the county courthouse, we packed up everything into an old rusted Ford trailer and drove 4 hours south, hoping a cheaper town meant a better life. But Bramble Creek turned out colder, quieter, and heavier than any of us expected, like the air itself remembered tragedies it wouldn't talk about. Our rental house sat at the end of a road called Pine Holler, though there wasn't a single pine in sight, only stripped trees and tall brown grass swaying like something hiding beneath it, and the house looked like it had been dragged out of a swamp. Faded green paint peeling in strips, warped windows, and a basement door that didn't belong in a normal house, reinforced with a horizontal iron slide bolt big enough for a barn. And when Mom saw it, she frowned and muttered, "Why would anyone lock a basement from the outside?" But Ron shrugged and said, "Old folks get paranoid, you know how it is," even though something dark flashed in his eyes like he knew damn well it wasn't normal, but didn't want to admit it in front of us. It was me, the narrator. My name is Lila, my older brother Cade, who was 14, and our toddler sister June, who was 2, and life would have been simple if not peaceful, if money wasn't always tight, and if the town itself didn't feel so watched. Like every time we walked down the street, people stared just a little too long, whispering things like, "New family on Pine Holler, wonder how long they'll last," which I didn't understand at the time, but which makes too much sense now. The McDonald's was important because my brother Cade started working there the week after we moved in, thanks to a manager named Doug, who hired teenagers without asking too many questions. And Cade came home every night smelling like fries and grease, throwing his paycheck straight to Mom because he knew we needed the help. And even though he complained, "That place gives me the creeps at night, Lil. Like there's always somebody watching from the play place windows," Mom told him, not to talk crazy, saying every job feels eerie alone after midnight. But Cade insisted it wasn't normal, telling me one night, "I swear I heard someone whisper my name from the walk-in freezer, like right behind me. And when I turned around, there wasn't even a shadow." But I laughed it off because Cade loved telling stories, and I was just a kid who still slept with a little LED unicorn nightlight shaped like a fat horse with glitter hair. The night everything happened, it was early December, snow on the ground but no wind. One of those dead winter nights where sound travels too clearly and nothing in the world feels alive. And at around 3:17 a.m., I woke up with that burning need to pee, but like always, I tried holding it because our hallway faced the kitchen, and the kitchen had a giant uncovered window facing our backyard, and everyone in Bramble Creek knew the rule. You don't look out windows at night, especially not on Pine Holler, because the forest line was too close, and sometimes people saw things moving between the trees, tall shapes, slow shadows, wrong things, and I always rushed past the window without turning my head. But that night something felt different the moment my feet hit the cold floorboards, like the house itself was holding its breath. Cade was asleep on the mattress across the room, snoring softly, and June was asleep in Mom and Ron's room, So I tiptoed into the hallway, my heart thumping in my ears for no reason I could justify. And as I passed the kitchen, I felt it before I heard it. This faint, deliberate tapping on the glass. So soft it could have been a branch, but steady, human, intentional. Tap, tap, tap. I froze, every muscle in my body going rigid, and against every instinct, my eyes drifted toward the window, even though I knew I shouldn't. And that's when I saw him, a man standing outside, his face pressed against the glass like he was trying to see into the house, his breath fogging the surface, his clothes filthy, like he'd been living outside for months, his long hair matted and tangled, his beard thick and grayish black, and his eyes, God, his eyes. They didn't scan around the room, didn't look curious. They were focused straight ahead, locked like he already knew exactly where each of us slept, like he'd been watching us long before tonight. And I gasped and ducked behind the counter, slapping a hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. My brain racing a mile a minute, thinking, is he gonna break the glass? Is he trying to get in? Why is he staring like that? I crouched there shaking, but after a few terrifying seconds the tapping stopped and I dared to peek around the corner. And that's when I heard the sound that still wakes me up at night. The subtle metallic click of our back door lock turning, and my stomach dropped. Because that wasn't some stranger trying his luck. That was someone with a key, someone who had access, someone who walked into our home like he'd done it 100 times. The door slid open slowly, not creaking, not forced, but smooth and familiar. And the man stepped inside, shutting it behind him without a sound. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a torn brown jacket. A faded Kansas City Royals cap pulled low over his eyes, and the way he moved was wrong. Not frantic, not sneaky, but casual, like a resident grabbing a midnight snack. He didn't even look around. He just walked straight to our pantry, opened it, grabbed a pack of crackers and an old bottle of soda, popped the cap, and started drinking while leaning against the counter like he'd been doing it for years. My whole body locked up as he turned and walked straight toward the basement door, unbolting it in one practiced motion, opening it, and descending into the darkness without hesitation, like he belonged down there. My breath trembled. I tried convincing myself I was still half asleep, but the cold tile against my knees told me this was real, horribly real. I needed help. I needed Ron. I needed Mom. But Mom was working the graveyard shift and Ron wouldn't be home till dawn. Cade was just down the hall. I crawled across the kitchen floor, keeping my body low, dragging a blanket under me so my feet wouldn't slap the wood, every sound amplified, every heartbeat feeling like an earthquake. When suddenly from behind me, I heard the basement door slam open, not gentle this time, but violently, like someone hit it from the inside. I panicked and threw the bolt shut a split second before something heavy crashed against it from below, rattling the whole frame, and I screamed, stumbling backwards, sprinting toward Cade's room, slamming the door behind me, whispering, Cade, wake up, someone's in the house," shaking him until he bolted upright, confused and groggy, muttering, "Lil, what the hell?" But I cut him off, voice cracking. "Someone came in through the back door. He went into the basement. He's trying to get out." And Cade didn't hesitate, didn't think. He just grabbed the Louisville slugger bat he kept by his mattress and said, "Stay behind me." Like he was suddenly twice his age, we crept into the hallway, and that's when the pounding started again. Boom, 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 on the basement door, each hit making the walls tremble, and Cade whispered, "What the hell is he hitting it with? A truck?" When suddenly headlights washed across the living room windows. Mom's car. She was home early. She stumbled inside the front door carrying her purse, exhausted, saying, "Why are you two up? It's 3:30. But then she saw the terror on our faces, heard the pounding downstairs, and dropped everything, rushing to us with her voice going sharp and quiet, the way it did when she meant business. "What happened?" And Cade said, "There's a man in the basement. He came in with a key. He's trying to break the door." And Mom's face went white, her jaw set, and she whispered, "Go upstairs, now," pushing us toward her room. But I grabbed her sleeve and blurted out, "He looked like he knew the house. He opened everything, like he lived here." And Mom froze for a half second, something flickering across her eyes. Recognition, fear, something old. She told us to lock the bedroom, and Cade and I did, even though we pressed our ears to the door, listening as she moved through the house, breathing hard, then heard her yank the biggest knife from the drawer, whispering furiously under her breath, "Not again, not again, not in this house." And I didn't understand what that meant, didn't know what "again" referred to. But before I could ask Cade, the entire downstairs exploded with noise, crashing, grunting, furniture falling over, Mom screaming, a deep male voice roaring like an animal, and Cade dropped the bat and sprinted out before I could grab him, yelling, "Mom," while I followed, tears streaming down my face. When we reached the bottom of the stairs, we saw Mom grappling with the man, the same filthy, wild-eyed stranger from the window, his hands wrapped around her wrists as she tried to stab him, their bodies slamming into the dining table hard enough to crack it. Cade screamed and swung the bat with everything he had, hitting the man across the back, the sound sickening like hitting wet sand, but it was enough to loosen his grip, giving Mom the opening to drive her knee into his stomach and ram him onto the floor, where she pinned him with her elbow, digging into his neck, shouting, "Call 911, now." And I fumbled for her phone on the counter, dialing with shaking fingers, sobbing into the receiver, while the operator tried calming me down, and the sirens were already screaming in the distance, when the man bucked upward with inhuman strength, flipping Mom onto the floor like she weighed nothing, lunging toward Cade with those dead, empty eyes. And I screamed, "Stop!" grabbing the nearest lamp and smashing it over his head, shards flying everywhere, the bulb exploding in a burst of sparks. He collapsed just long enough for Cade to drag Mom away, blood running down her arm, and as the man staggered upright again, like something possessed, the cops burst through the door, 3 officers tackling him, tasing him repeatedly until he finally crumpled. Everything blurred after that. EMTs rushing Mom to the hospital for stitches, cops questioning us until sunrise, Cade shaking uncontrollably as he told them everything. But nothing hit harder than when the sheriff returned from the basement, pale as ash, holding a plastic evidence bag containing a McDonald's napkin, several empty food wrappers, and a stack of receipts, all from the McDonald's off Highway 27, Cade's workplace, dated from the past week. The sheriff said quietly, "Whoever that man is, he's been living in your basement for a while." And my stomach twisted when he added, "And whoever had this key," holding up the copy he found in the man's pocket, "knew this house long before you did." But the worst part wasn't that he'd lived beneath us, eaten our food, watched us move room to room. It was that Mom recognized him. She sat on the couch, shaking, whispering, "I knew it, I knew he'd come back." But when we asked what she meant, she refused to say, only staring toward the basement door like something unspeakable lurked behind it, something deeper than the man himself. We moved out the next morning, leaving half our things behind because Mom said, "We're not taking anything he touched." And Cade quit McDonald's that same day, shaking as he tossed his uniform in the dumpster behind the gas station. Life never really went back to normal after that. I still don't walk past windows at night. I still check locks 3 times, sometimes 4, and I still hear that faint tapping when I'm half asleep, like someone reminding me they once had a key. But the part that stays with me most is the way Mom looked at me after everything was over. Her voice soft and breaking when she said, "I didn't let you touch that knife because I wasn't about to let my baby carry a man's blood on her hands." And even now, when nights get cold and too quiet, I swear sometimes I hear footsteps under floorboards that don't exist anymore, like some part of Bramble Creek followed us, watching, waiting, hungry for a door that isn't locked. I remember the exact moment everything flipped in my life because it didn't come with some dramatic thunderstorm or eerie silence. It came on one of those bland, in-between days where nothing special is supposed to happen. And somehow that's what made it worse, because I never saw it coming. I was 17, living in a middle-class, kind of forgotten suburb called North Sycamore, 20 minutes outside Madison, Wisconsin. The type of place where every street looked the same, the kind of place where people worked long shifts, mowed their lawns on Sundays, and bitched about gas prices like it was a sport. And I guess none of that mattered, because in that kind of town, you learned to make your own fun, which for me meant hanging out with my close friend Ronan, this loud, goofy dude who wore old metal band shirts and smelled like Axe mixed with car grease, because he was always messing with his mom's busted Impala. My home life wasn't bad, just tense, with my dad working doubles at the distribution center and my mom juggling 2 part-time jobs, one at a laundromat and 1 cleaning classrooms at the community college. So I usually stayed out of the house to avoid the constant arguing about bills. And that Saturday in early October, warm sun but chilly wind, that perfect fall mix, I had rehearsal for my school's fall talent showcase. Nothing major, just skits and music numbers. But I took it seriously because it was the one place I felt like I wasn't invisible. Rehearsal ended around noon and everyone scattered, talking about lunch plans, and I was packing my bag when Ronan slapped the back of my head and went, "Yo, Isaac, McDonald's run, dude, I'm dying." And I laughed because he acted like he hadn't eaten in weeks, but really it was just our routine, our comfort thing, that same McDonald's on Fairhaven Road with the peeling yellow arches and perpetually broken ice cream machine, the place every teen in town ended up at sooner or later. I told him, yeah, sure, whatever, I was starving too. And we got into his Impala, that rattling death trap with the sagging ceiling fabric and passenger door that squeaked like a tortured rat every time I shut it, and he blasted his music way too loud. Some old school hip-hop his older brother had burned onto a scratched CD, and we laughed about dumb stuff the whole way there. Stupid jokes about teachers, about rehearsals, about how Ronan swore he saw a raccoon giving him the finger earlier that morning near his driveway. And for those 10 minutes, I forgot about everything else. Forgot about the college pressure my parents kept dumping on me. Forgot about the pile of homework waiting at home. Forgot about how tired I always felt from juggling school and my part-time job stocking shelves at Redline Grocery. Life felt normal, harmless, chill, right up until it didn't. The McDonald's parking lot wasn't crowded, just a few cars, a couple families, the usual Saturday lunch vibe, nothing off or creepy or wrong at first glance. And we walked inside, instantly smacked with AC blasting way too cold, and Ronan threw his arms out dramatically and said, "Bro, I swear they keep the AC at like -10 in here." And I snorted and said, "Yeah, it's because they hate us." And we stepped into the short line, just 2 people ahead, a tired nurse still in scrubs, and a middle-aged guy staring too intensely at the dollar menu as if it held the meaning of life. To our right was a side door, the one nobody used except delivery drivers or kids sneaking out to smoke. And I remember noticing that door was cracked open just an inch. Not enough to be obvious, but enough that cold air leaked through. And I don't know why, but something about that tiny detail made my skin prickle, like when you sense someone standing behind you, even though nobody's there. Ronan leaned in and whispered, "Bet you the ice cream machine's broken again." And I whispered back, "When is it not?" And he hummed a sarcastic drum roll as the nurse ordered. But then something shifted in the atmosphere, subtle at first, that weird shift your brain picks up before you consciously understand it. Because the moment I turned my head toward the side entrance, I saw him. This man standing halfway outside, holding the door slightly open with his shoulder. And at first, I thought maybe he worked there, like a maintenance guy or someone coming back from a smoke break. But then I noticed the rest. He wasn't wearing anything resembling a uniform, just a faded flannel jacket that looked like it had been dragged through dust and gravel, gray jeans with dark stains on the thighs, and heavy boots, the kind truckers wear. And he had this thick black beard that wasn't trimmed, just wild and uneven. And his eyes, man, his eyes were wrong. Too wide, too bloodshot, like he hadn't slept in days, maybe weeks, and he wasn't looking around the restaurant, or at the workers, or even at the menu. No, he was staring at me. Not scanning, not curious, just staring, locked in, like he knew me, like he'd been waiting for me, and the back of my neck tingled so hard I felt nauseous. I nudged Ronan subtly and whispered, "Don't look now, but that dude by the side door is straight up staring at us." And Ronan whispered back, "What dude?" And I hissed, "The one in the flannel, bro. Don't turn your head too fast." But because Ronan had zero chill, he turned his whole body like a malfunctioning robot and looked directly at the guy, and I whispered, "Dude, subtle." And Ronan snorted, but his expression changed fast when he saw the guy staring our way, and he muttered under his breath, "Okay, that's weird." And right as he said that, the man stepped fully inside, letting the door shut behind him without a sound. What freaked me out wasn't that he walked in, it was the way he did it, slow and steady, like he knew he belonged there, like he wasn't doing anything wrong, like everything was normal except nothing about him was normal. He didn't get in line, didn't look at the employees, didn't even glance around. He walked toward the dining area, stopped behind a partition wall, and just stood there, half hidden, like he wanted to watch people without being watched. Ronan whispered, "Let's just order quick and eat fast." And I nodded, trying to shake off the unease, telling myself I was overreacting. Maybe he was homeless or mentally unwell. Maybe he was waiting for someone. Maybe he was just weird and harmless. And we ordered our food, 2 McDoubles, 2 large fries, and I grabbed a large Sprite while Ronan asked for a chocolate shake that the worker told him the machine couldn't make. And Ronan muttered, "Of course." And I laughed weakly, my nerves buzzing. We grabbed our tray, and Ronan headed straight to a booth near the back. And I wanted to sit somewhere more central, more visible, not tucked away, but he was already halfway there. So I followed, forcing myself to chill. The booth was clean, sunlight pouring in through the big window beside it. And for a second, everything felt normal again, until I looked up and saw the man had moved. He wasn't behind the partition anymore. He was at the window outside, standing directly behind Ronan, only separated by a pane of glass, his face inches from the window, staring in at us, or more specifically, at Ronan. My blood turned to ice. I whispered, "Ronan, don't react, but he's right behind you outside." And Ronan's chewing slowed until he set his burger down, whispering, "For real?" And I whispered, "Don't turn around fast." And he rotated his head a fraction, just enough to see peripherally, and I saw his whole body tense. The man had his hands pressed lightly on the glass, his breath fogging circular patches on the window, and there was something looped around his shoulder. At first, I thought it was a bag strap, but then I saw the rest. A worn hunting bag, the type used for carrying gear, and sticking out of the side pocket was a long, curved handle wrapped in black tape, and my stomach dropped because I knew that shape instantly. A machete handle, unmistakable. Ronan whispered, "Bro, he's armed," and my voice came out tight. "Yeah, I see it." And we both stayed frozen, calculating, scared, but trying not to look it. And the man didn't move, didn't blink, didn't shift. He was studying Ronan like he was prey, like he'd locked onto him specifically. For some reason I didn't understand. After a long moment, the man slowly walked along the side of the building, disappearing from view. And Ronan whispered, "Should we dip?" And I whispered back, "If we leave now, he could follow us. I don't want to walk outside while he's out there." And Ronan whispered, "Bro, why us? What did we do?" And I said, "Nothing, man. He's just unhinged." But deep down, I didn't believe that. It felt targeted. It felt intentional. I got up and approached the counter, lowering my voice as I told the teenage cashier, "Hey, there's a guy outside with a weapon. He's been watching us." And the kid blinked slowly, then said, "Okay, I'll tell the manager," with the energy of someone who had never dealt with real danger before. And I walked back to our table, frustrated and scared, and Ronan whispered, "They don't care, do they?" And I shook my head. That's when I had the idea to grab evidence. So I held up my phone like I was snapping a picture of Ronan, and he leaned in, playing along, smiling stupidly. And I tilted the camera slightly to capture the man peeking around the corner of the building again, his eyes locked on us, machete handle visible, and I snapped the shot. Then he moved again, this time to a window near the play area, staring in from another angle, shifting positions but never breaking eye contact. People around the restaurant started noticing him. A mom with 2 kids gasped, pulling them closer. An older couple stiffened. A teen girl took out her phone, whispering to her friend. Tension thickened like the air before a tornado. And then, he disappeared. I scanned every window but nothing. No figure, no shadow, no movement. Ronan whispered, "Where the hell did he go?" And my voice cracked. "I don't know." And after another minute, I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, whispering urgently, giving them a description, the weapon, the photo, and the dispatcher told us to stay inside, that officers were en route. And right as she said that, movement flashed outside. The man was back, stepping out from behind the dumpster enclosure, staring dead at us through the window nearest the side door. And this time, he walked toward the building, slow steps, boots crunching gravel, stopping only a few feet from the door. And Ronan whispered, "He's coming in, dude. He's coming in." And I felt pure adrenaline spike through my chest as the man rested his hand on the door handle, but then paused, his head tilted, like he heard the distant sirens before we did. He stepped back, eyes still locked on Ronan, then turned and walked away. Not ran, not hurried, just casually walked toward an alley beside the hardware store, got onto an old black mountain bike, and pedaled off without looking back. The dispatcher told us officers were minutes away, and we stayed frozen until 2 squad cars pulled in. They questioned us, saw the photo, took our statements, told us he hadn't committed a crime yet, but they'd searched the area. They didn't find him. They told us it was safe to leave. Ronan and I walked to the car shaking, silent, both pretending we were fine, but we weren't. That night I couldn't sleep, replaying his eyes, that stare, that certainty he had chosen Ronan specifically. Over the next few months, Ronan became paranoid, always checking windows, always scanning parking lots. One night he called me breathing fast, saying he thought he saw the same man near his backyard fence, but by the time he looked again, the yard was empty. I don't know if it was real or fear or both. A year passed. I turned 18, graduated, and moved out of North Sycamore, but the photo is still in my phone. Grainy, zoomed in, but unmistakable. a man with wild eyes, a hunting bag, and a machete handle glaring through a McDonald's window at two teenage boys like he had already decided something. Sometimes I wonder if he remembered us, if he ever looked for Ronan again, if he watches someone else now through some other window, because people like him don't just stop. They wait, they pick, they return. And the worst part is knowing we walked inches away from whatever he had planned that day, and only luck or the sound of sirens stopped him. I was 11 years old when everything shifted in my life. The year the world still felt big and confusing, and I was trying to figure out where I fit inside it. But I remember that specific summer like it's burned into the back of my skull, because nothing before or after has ever felt the same. I lived in a cramped duplex on the east end of Riverside with my mom, my older sister Gracie, and my uncle's family who occupied the bottom floor, which meant our nights were loud, the walls thin, and every little fight or laugh could be heard through the floorboards like ghost sounds traveling through pipes. But back then, that chaos felt normal to me, comforting even, the background noise of my childhood, and whenever I needed an escape, there was only one place I felt like I could breathe: the McDonald's on Hemlock Avenue, the old one with the flickering sign and the drive-through speaker that always crackled like it was haunted. That place was practically a landmark in our neighborhood, the kind of spot where every kid had memories of birthday parties, spilled sodas, and fries stolen from someone else's tray. So when my best friend at the time, Tomas, who was 13 and acted like he was at least 18, the kind of kid who pretended he'd seen everything, asked if I wanted to go there that late afternoon in July, I didn't even think twice. I just grabbed my worn-out sneakers and said, "Yeah, let's bounce," before my mom could rope me into another chore. The heat was brutal that day, even for California, the air thick and sticky, every breath tasting like hot dust. And I remember Thomas wiping sweat off his forehead and muttering, "Damn, feels like the devil left the oven open," which made me laugh because he always talked like that, half joking but half serious. And we kept walking down our block past the liquor store, where old men hung out like permanent furniture, past the empty lot where kids sometimes fought after school, until the golden arches came into view, glowing faintly through the rippling heat waves, like some cheap neon mirage. Everything felt normal until we got closer, close enough for me to notice that the parking lot, usually jammed even on slow days, was completely empty, like wiped clean. Not a single car, not even a stray shopping cart, and even Thomas slowed down when he saw the darkened windows and muttered, "That's weird as hell, man." But he still pushed the door open because Thomas never backed down from anything. Not fights, not dares, not weird vibes. The second we stepped in, I felt something was wrong. Not horror, not fear, just wrong. Because McDonald's was never quiet, never still, but that day there was no noise at all. Not the beeping of fry timers, no chatter from employees, not even the AC hum. Just this heavy silence, like the air had weight to it. And that's when we saw her, the cashier behind the counter, standing so still, she looked like a cutout cardboard display until her eyes moved, slowly, like it took effort. She had a name tag that read Helene, but the letters looked scratched, like someone had tried to dig them out, and her skin was pale, not sick pale, but waxy pale, like plastic fruit under bad lighting, and she smiled at us. But it wasn't a normal smile. It looked stretched, forced, too wide, and in this slow, dragging voice she said, "Welcome to McDonald's. What can I get for you boys?" And Thomas tried to play it cool with a nervous chuckle, saying, Yeah, can we get 2 McChickens and a large fry?" But I nudged him because something about the woman felt off. Her eyes didn't blink, not once, just stared at us like she was looking through us instead of at us. She turned robotically and slid into the kitchen, but when she pushed the door open, I swear I heard something inside. This low, dragging sound like something heavy being pulled across the tiles, or maybe someone crawling. And Tomas whispered, "Bro, did you hear that?" And I nodded. But neither of us moved because we were kids, and sometimes being a kid means staying when you should run. While waiting, I looked around and noticed more things wrong. Every table was spotless, not clean, spotless. No crumbs, no stray straw wrappers, no fingerprints on the ketchup dispensers, nothing human, like the place had been reset. A sudden cold draft brushed past us, even though the AC wasn't running, and Thomas shivered, saying, "What the hell, man? This place feels like a morgue." And I was about to agree when Helene returned holding our tray, but something was off. Her hands shook slightly, even though her face stayed frozen in that unnatural smile, and she said, "Enjoy your meal." But her voice cracked at the end, like someone else was speaking through her. We sat down because walking out felt too obvious, too rude, too risky. But when Tomas opened the box of fries, he scrunched his face and said, "Yo, why do these smell like metal?" And I leaned in and smelled it too, this weird metallic tang, like pennies soaked in old water. Then he took a fry, bit it, and spit it out instantly, whispering, Nah, something's wrong with that." And right then, the lights flickered, not once, but in a strange rhythmic pattern, almost like Morse code but uneven. Flicker, flicker, pause, flicker, flicker, flicker. And from the kitchen, we heard a thud, then another thud, getting louder, and Tomas grabbed my arm, whispering, "Dude, we're dipping now." But when we stood up, Helene was suddenly right behind us, standing way too close, close enough that I could smell something on her, something stale and damp, like wet cardboard left in a basement. And she said, "Leaving so soon?" in a voice that didn't match her lips, like two voices layered over each other. Thomas stammered, Yeah, we gotta go." And she tilted her head too far, almost unnaturally far, the bones in her neck not cracking or resisting, just bending like rubber. And she said, "The meal isn't finished." And the kitchen door swung open behind her, not from wind or employees, but like something pushed it from the ground. That dragging noise returned, louder, and through the small window in the kitchen door, I saw something with two long arms pulling itself forward on the tiles, something without a face, just a stretched, sagging shape with deep sunken holes where eyes should have been. And I whispered, "Thomas, run." And it was the first time I'd ever seen real fear in his eyes. Not play fear, not pretend courage, but pure terror. And he whispered, "On 3. 1, 2. But he didn't wait for 3. He grabbed my arm and bolted with me toward the exit, pushing the door so hard it slammed open. We ran across the lot, not looking back until we reached the alley by the laundromat, both of us panting, trembling. And when we finally looked back, the McDonald's windows were dark, like someone shut off everything at once. We never talked about it after that day. Not because we forgot, but because talking made it feel real again. And some things aren't supposed to be real. Years passed and life moved on. School, jobs, family drama. Until I was 19 and working late shifts at a grocery store in Fontana when I got a text from Thomas. "Bro, you still remember Hemlock McDee's?" And my stomach dropped, because why ask that out of nowhere? I called him, but his voice sounded off, quieter, shaky. And he said, I think something's following me." And I asked what he meant. And he said, "Every night for the past week, I swear I see a shape outside my window. Tall, bending, like that thing from the kitchen." And I told him he was probably tired, hallucinating. But he whispered, "Nah, man. Last night I saw eyes, glowing red, like lit coals. And before I could say anything, he said, "I think going there that day did something to us," then hung up. The next morning, his sister called me crying, saying Thomas was missing, his backpack left near the storm drain behind their apartment building. The police searched for weeks, but no body, no clothes, no phone, nothing. I went to Hemlock Avenue alone the night after the search ended, even though the McDonald's had been closed for years and replaced by a fenced-off construction site, the building half demolished. But as I stood there staring at the rubble, I felt it. That same cold draft from childhood, brushing past my neck, carrying that metallic smell. And in one of the broken windows of the half-demolished kitchen wall, I saw movement. A figure pulling itself forward, its body sagging like melted wax, its eye sockets glowing faint red, pulsing like slow dying embers. I stumbled back, whispering, "Thomas?" because I swear the shape moved like him. Same height, same stance, same way he used to tilt his head when he was confused. And then the shape froze, lifted its head, and opened a mouth that wasn't a mouth, just a stretched slit of darkness, and a voice slipped out, layered and broken, whispering, "Finish your meal." And I ran. God, I ran. Because suddenly, everything from that day at 11 made sense. Whatever lived inside that McDonald's, whatever crawled across the tiles, whatever used the employees like puppets, never left. It followed him. Now it's following me. And some nights when I can't sleep, when the streets outside my window go too quiet, I hear dragging on the pavement, slow, steady, patient, like something is crawling toward me, hungry, unfinished, waiting for the day I stop running. I never planned on working after school at all, never imagined myself dealing with angry customers asking for extra ketchup packets or wiping sticky soda off the lobby floors. But when my mom got laid off from her administrative job at a local factory outside Plain Ridge, Colorado, I had to step up, and that's how I ended up working part-time at a McDonald's tucked between a Dollar Tree and a vape shop, the kind of place you drive past without thinking twice. I was 17, stressed, eager to help, and honestly a little proud I could bring home even a bit of money. And I remember the first night I walked into the building, smelling those greasy fries and hearing the fryers hiss like they were alive, thinking, okay, maybe this won't be so bad. But that was long before I realized this job would leave scars deeper than anything I'd ever experienced, before I discovered that some places hold things you can't explain and shouldn't try to. My name is Isla, and I grew up with my grandmother, whom we called Nana Rowe, telling stories from her childhood, working as a young caretaker in an old Victorian house in rural Massachusetts. Stories about hearing footsteps in the walls, furniture being moved in locked rooms, shadows stretching longer than they should, and mirrors with reflections that lagged behind her movements. But I always brushed them off as spooky tales to entertain grandkids on winter nights. And even after she died the year before I got the McDonald's job, I used to laugh remembering how she'd whisper, "Some doors shouldn't be opened unless you're ready for what's behind them," a line that would haunt me later. My McDonald's crew was small and close-knit. The shift supervisor, Logan, was a tired but kind 29-year-old single dad with a dry sense of humor. There was Bella, who was 18, and endlessly dramatic in that fun way that made even cleaning the milkshake machine tolerable. And there was Tyler, the grill guy, whose entire personality consisted of football, energy drinks, and talking trash about customers the second they pulled away. And then there was Layla, my best friend on the job, quiet but sharp, the kind of girl who noticed everything and said little unless it mattered. And if she ever said something felt off, you listened. The night everything happened, none of us knew what was coming, and it all started completely normal, even boring. The kind of shift where the biggest highlight is stealing fresh fries from the basket while no one's watching. It was a Saturday in October, around 10:15 p.m. The Halloween decorations were half fallen off the windows because the tape sucked. The lobby was dusty from a windstorm earlier, and I remember humming this stupid song stuck in my head while wiping fingerprints off the kiosk screens, and everything felt so ordinary that in hindsight I should have known something was wrong, because real horror never enters loudly. It slips in quietly, unnoticed. At around 10:27, with 33 minutes until lobby close, I saw her, the first woman, standing on the far edge of the parking lot under the broken street light, her silhouette still, her body facing the building completely, wearing this heavy-looking navy coat that made 0 sense for early fall. I squinted, half thinking I was paranoid, and called out softly, "Hey, Belle, you see somebody out there?" And Bella walked over, glanced out, shrugged, and said, "Probably someone waiting for an Uber, girl. Relax." But something in my chest tightened because the woman wasn't on her phone, wasn't pacing, wasn't even shifting her weight like normal people do. She was just staring at our glass like she was waiting for me specifically to notice. Ignoring it, I went back to spraying down tables until a full 10 minutes passed, and I felt someone watching me again. And when I looked up, the woman wasn't alone anymore. Another one stood beside her. Same coat, same rigid posture, and this time they were closer. Standing right outside under the awning now, inches from the door, both facing in, faces pale, blank, frozen in an expression I can only describe as unsettlingly empty. And I whispered, "Layla, come here, please." And she came over, and when she saw them, her breath hitched and she whispered, "They look wrong." And that word lodged itself inside my brain. I waved awkwardly through the glass and mouthed, "Drive-through only," pointing to the glowing menu board outside, but they didn't react at all. No turning, no blinking, no acknowledgement, and it made my skin crawl. I hurried to the kitchen area where Logan was counting inventory and said, "2 women keep staring in. Can you talk to them?" And he frowned, wiped his hands on his apron, and walked with his usual confidence toward the front door, but stopped short as soon as he saw them, because even he, the guy who once broke up a literal fistfight in the parking lot, looked uneasy and said, "That's weird, but hey, let's ignore them. Lobby's closing in 15 anyway." Except they didn't. Leave, not at 10:45, not at 10:55, not even at 11 o'clock when we officially locked the glass doors. At 11:06, right when I was stacking chairs upside down on the tables, the front door suddenly clicked, the unmistakable metallic sound of the lock releasing, and I froze because only 2 keys existed for that door. Logan had one, and the other was stored in the office safe. "Logan, did you unlock the front?" I shouted, heart pounding. He leaned out from the kitchen and yelled, "No, I'm in the middle of prep, why?" But before I could respond, the door swung open silently, and both women stepped inside with this unnatural synchronicity, their shoes tapping gently on the tile, their movements too smooth, too rehearsed, like puppets being guided. "Ladies, the lobby's closed," Logan said firmly, stepping forward. "You'll need to use the drive-through." But the women just turned their heads toward him in eerie unison before shifting their eyes back onto me and slowly walking toward the counter. "Isla, come back here," Layla whispered urgently, grabbing my wrist, but something in me froze, like my feet were locked to the spot. The woman in front leaned slightly over the counter, folding her hands, and in a soft, chilling voice said, "You saw us first." And her breath smelled like cold metal, like blood, making me choke on air, and her partner's voice layered on top, deeper and vibrating, saying, "You watched the door open." And I stumbled back, shaking my head, whispering, I don't know what you're talking about, please, please just go." But they both smiled at the exact same moment, a slow widening of their mouths that didn't match any human expression I'd ever seen. Logan stepped in between us, saying, "All right, that's enough. Time to go." But the smiling woman turned her eyes toward him without moving her head and said, "You shouldn't interrupt." And right as she said it, every single light in the building shut off at once, not flickered, not dimmed, shut off like someone ripped the wires out, leaving only the red-tinted emergency lights casting hellish shadows across the lobby. Someone screamed. I think it was me. And I heard the shake machine rumble unnaturally, vibrating like something alive was inside it. The speakers overhead crackled before playing the McDonald's jingle in a slow, corrupted drone, dragging each note until it sounded like a funeral dirge. Logan shouted, "Everyone in the back, now!" and grabbed my arm as Bella shrieked behind us. We sprinted toward the kitchen, slipping on the slick tiles, nearly crashing into the fryer station, and dove into the walk-in freezer because its heavy door was the most solid barrier we had. Layla slammed it shut from inside, and Tyler pushed a crate of frozen beef patties against it. Even though the door already locked from within, we were all breathing like we'd run miles, our breath fogging around us, and Logan finally gasped, Okay, what the hell was that?" And Bella cried, "Why did they talk like that? Why did their voices sound wrong?" And Layla whispered, "They didn't blink, not once." And then, just as I tried to steady myself, I heard it, the slow dragging sound across the tile outside the freezer, like something heavy was crawling or pulling itself along, interrupted by soft tapping like long nails on the metal surface. Logan whispered, "Don't make a sound." And we stood frozen as the tapping traveled along the wall, stopped by the handle, paused, and then scraped downward slowly like someone was dragging a blade across the steel. I pressed my hand over my mouth to muffle the sob building in my throat, and Tyler muttered shakily, "This is some demon-ass crap, man." But Layla, always perceptive, whispered, "No, it's something else. It's like they weren't even human." And the tapping suddenly stopped. The speakers outside hummed, then went silent, leaving a suffocating stillness that crept under my skin. After what felt like half an hour, though it could have been 5 minutes or 3 hours, the lights outside clicked back on, normal fluorescent lights, humming softly like nothing had ever happened. Logan slowly opened the freezer door, using a broom handle through the crack first before pushing it open fully, and the lobby looked untouched. No women, no dragged footprints, no shadows. Nothing moved except the ketchup packet that had burst near the soda station, but scrawled on the touchscreen kiosk nearest the front door, written in dark red ketchup, were the words, "She saw the open door. Now she walks with us." My stomach clenched so hard I nearly passed out, and Bella was trembling so badly she couldn't stand. We checked the cameras, desperate for proof, but the footage between 11:03 p.m. and 11:26 p.m. was nothing but static, like the entire system was erased during that time. No record of the women entering, no outage, nothing. We quit the next morning, all 4 of us, without a second thought, because how do you keep working in a place where reality cracks open in front of you? But the part that haunts me most came months later when I was driving home alone at 1 a.m. after a study group, passing the old McDonald's building, which had closed down only 2 months after we all quit due to unexplainable electrical issues. And as my car rolled past the dark windows, I saw them. 2 women in long navy coats, standing by the glass, smiling that same unnatural smile, their heads turning slowly toward me in perfect sync, and I swear on everything I love. Their mouths moved as if whispering, "You saw us first." I had never been the kind of person who scared easy, not when I was a kid growing up in the cracked sidewalk neighborhoods of Riverbend. Not when my older cousins made me watch horror movies at 8 years old. Not even when my dad used to work graveyard shifts and leave me alone in the house listening to every creak, like it was someone stepping inside, But the night that changed everything for me happened when I was 19 and working the late closing shift at a McDonald's off Route 41, a lonely little spot at the edge of Pine Hollow, a town so quiet people joked its population dropped after 9 p.m. because everyone went to sleep at the same time. And I only got the job because my aunt insisted I stack some savings before college, since my mom couldn't help much after her second divorce. So I picked the McDonald's you could see from the gas station, the one with the old yellow arches still faded from the 90s. And I swear to God, nothing about that place ever felt haunted or cursed or even weird until one November night when everything shifted, and I still replay it in my head like a tape stuck on loop, because even now, years later, I cannot shake the feeling that something from that night followed me home and never really left. And I guess the best way to explain what happened is to start with how normal that day had been, because that's the part that always messes with me the most. How calm life was, how nothing hinted at the nightmare waiting once the sky turned dark and the cold rolled in like it was carrying something in its lungs. Anyway, I clocked in at 4:02 p.m., late by 2 minutes, and my manager that night, a tough but fair woman named Raleigh, who had this habit of snapping her gum whenever she got stressed, side-eyed me and said, "Cutting it close, kid." And I just shrugged and told her the bus driver had been moving slower than a turtle with a hangover, and she snorted and tossed me a headset, telling me I had drive-through until 7 before switching to lobby cleanup. We had a small crew that night. Luis on grill, always blasting old-school hip-hop under his breath. Tina on fries, the queen of complaining. And Bree, my favorite co-worker, who moved like she had caffeine for blood and talked so fast half the customers couldn't keep up. And she nudged me as I tied my apron and said, "You look extra tired today. You good?" And I said, "Yeah, just college apps stressing me out." And she said, "Girl, same, but hey, at least McDonald's gives us free soda. That counts for something." And I laughed, because she was the only person who could joke about minimum wage like it was some comedy show. But the real reason I was tired was because I hadn't been sleeping much. Every night for the past week, I'd been waking up to the sound of knocking from somewhere in the house. Not loud, not frantic, just a steady tap, 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 like someone politely asking to come in. And every time I checked, no one was there, and maybe that should have been a warning. But back then, I just blamed the old plumbing. Anyway, the dinner rush came and went. Nothing unusual, just families grabbing happy meals and truckers ordering enough calories to knock out a horse. But around 9:30 p.m., the store got really quiet. The kind of quiet where you can hear the freezer humming like it's breathing. And Raleigh yelled from the office for us to start deep cleaning the lobby since we'd probably close early if things stayed dead. And I grabbed a sanitizer spray bottle and a rag and started wiping down tables in the empty seating area, humming along to whatever Luis was playing on the speaker hidden behind the grill, when the front door made this long, soft creak, not the normal open and shut sound, but like someone pushed it slow enough to not be noticed. And I looked up expecting a late-night customer, maybe a tired traveler or a drunk college kid. But instead, I saw 3 people standing just inside the door, a tall man in a faded brown coat, shoulders too stiff, head slightly tilted like he was listening to something far away, and on each side of him stood a woman wearing long, charcoal gray coats that brushed the tops of their shoes. And I swear, at first I didn't think much, except damn, they're dressed old-fashioned, but then something in my stomach tightened because they didn't move, didn't walk further, didn't even blink, just stood there staring straight ahead like mannequins that someone had forgotten to pose. And I tried giving my usual customer greeting. "Hey, welcome in. Lobby closes at 11, but drive-thru's open if y'all need a minute." But none of them responded, not even a twitch, and for some reason, I felt this weird pressure behind my eyes, like they were staring straight past me, and I called out, "Hey, y'all okay?" And the man slowly turned his head toward me, his movement so controlled it didn't even look human. And in this low, flat voice he said, "We're expected." And something about the way he said it made every hair on my arm stand up, and Bree whispered from behind the counter, "Girl, who the hell are they talking to?" Because clearly no one had expected them, and Raleigh came out from the office, her gum popping loudly as she walked up front, and she gave them her manager stare and said, "Sir, ma'am, lobby service ends soon. Do you need something?" And that's when the woman on the right stepped forward, her coat barely rustling, and she said, "We've come for what was left behind." And Raleigh looked confused, glancing at me like maybe they were referring to a forgotten bag, but the woman continued, "It was promised." And Raleigh, never patient with nonsense, snapped, "Promised by who and for what?" And the tall man simply said, "You will show us," like it wasn't a request but a command. And the temperature in the room dropped enough that I could see a cloud of my own breath as I exhaled, and Luis stuck his head out of the kitchen and said, "Yo, why is it freezing out here?" And Bree muttered, "Nope, nope, nope, I'm not dealing with ghosts tonight." And she tried to laugh it off, but her voice shook. Raleigh tried to take control again, saying firmly, "Sir, ma'am, you need to either order food or leave." But the woman closest to the door shook her head slowly and whispered, "We do not eat." And the way she said it gave me a chill that settled deep in my chest. And then, without warning, all three of them turned at the same exact moment, not toward the counter, not toward any of us, but toward the hallway leading to the old storage room in the back, the one none of us used anymore, because corporate had sent instructions a year earlier to keep it sealed due to structural issues. Though Raleigh once joked the real reason was probably rats or asbestos, but the three strangers began walking toward it like they knew exactly where it was, even though the hallway wasn't visible from the entrance, unless you worked there. Raleigh stepped in front of them, holding out her hand, saying, "You can't go back there. Stop right now." But they didn't listen. They moved in perfect unison, silent, their footsteps making no sound on the tiles, and something about that made nausea twist in my stomach. Raleigh grabbed the emergency phone to call the district manager, but before she could even dial, the hallway lights flickered like a brownout, dimming, then brightening, then dimming again. And when they stabilized, the three strangers were already halfway down the hall. Raleigh cursed under her breath and shouted to Luis, "Call 911 now." And he scrambled for his phone while Bree grabbed my arm, whispering, "Alina, what the hell is this? What's happening?" And I didn't know, but something deep inside me, a primal instinct, told me whatever those three people were, they were not supposed to be here, and we needed to stop them, but my legs felt like concrete. Still, Raleigh stormed down the hallway after them, and I followed because she told me to, and Bree followed me because she refused to be alone. And behind us, I heard Luis say, "Bro, they ain't even ringing. The call ain't going through. What the hell?" And as we reached the hallway, the temperature dropped even more, the air so cold it felt like needles pricking my skin. And at the end of the hall, the old storage room door, a door that was padlocked for months, was standing slightly ajar, the lock hanging broken, twisted like something snapped it from the inside. Raleigh whispered, "This isn't possible." And we stepped inside. And that's when everything in my world tilted, because the small storage room didn't look like a storage room anymore. No shelves, no boxes, no cleaning supplies. Just a dark, empty space that felt larger than it should have been. Like the walls weren't real or had been pushed back somehow. And the three figures stood in the center, their backs to us, and I could hear something. Like faint whispers, hundreds of them, speaking all at once. Words I couldn't understand, but that scraped at my brain like nails against metal, and Raleigh shouted, "This is private property. You need to leave right now." But her voice sounded thin, swallowed by the darkness in the room, and the man finally turned around, his face unnaturally pale, his eyes completely black, no whites at all, and he said, "What was promised to us was taken, hidden beneath this place, bound in names and bloodlines." And Raleigh stammered, "What the hell are you talking about?" And the woman in front stepped closer to her, the air around her warping like heat off pavement, but cold, freezing cold, and she said, "This land was built on debt, and debts must be paid." And suddenly the floor beneath us vibrated, a low rumble like something shifting deep underground, and Bree screamed, grabbing my hand so tight her nails dug into my skin, and Raleigh grabbed us both and said, "We're leaving now." And she dragged us backward out of the room, slamming the door shut behind us, her hands shaking so badly she fumbled with her phone again, but the call still wouldn't go through. No signal, no dial tone, like the building was cut off. We ran back to the lobby where Luis and Tina were huddled near the front counter, Luis muttering, "They're still in the hall. Look, look." And when I turned, I saw their silhouettes standing at the end of the hallway, motionless again. But this time, they were staring straight at us, and I swear, the shadows around them were moving, swirling like smoke. Raleigh shouted, "Everyone out the back exit, now!" And we ran, pushing through the kitchen, through the emergency door that beeped loudly as we shoved into the freezing night air, and we didn't stop running until we reached the far side of the parking lot near the dumpsters, panting, shaking, crying. And Raleigh counted us, me, Bree, Luis, Tina, but then froze and whispered, "Where's Jamal?" And my stomach dropped, because I remembered seeing him earlier near the fryer, joking about the cold, and no one had seen him since. Raleigh tried going back toward the door, but the back exit slammed shut on its own, the metal rattling so hard it echoed across the lot, and we stood there helpless, watching through the kitchen window as the interior lights flickered violently like a storm of electricity was raging inside. Then everything went dark, pitch black, and for a moment the entire building felt like a dead, hollow thing, and Luis whispered, "God, man, what's happening in there?" And none of us had an answer. After what felt like forever, the lights came back on, steady this time, too steady, like nothing had happened at all, and Raleigh forced the door open and rushed inside, screaming Jamal's name, and we followed, terrified of what we might find. But the kitchen was empty, the hallway was empty, the storage room door was still shut, but Jamal was gone. We searched everywhere, the lobby, the freezer, the bathrooms, even outside around the dumpsters, but there was no trace of him, not a single footprint, not a single sound, just the lingering cold in the hallway and the faint smell of something old, like damp earth and burnt wood. The police arrived 30 minutes later, and when Raleigh tried to explain what happened, they looked at us like we were crazy, like we were covering for something, and they reviewed the security footage, but when they played it back, nothing showed up except us running in panic. The lobby door never opened, the hallway stayed empty, and the storage room door looked untouched. And worst of all, footage of Jamal simply froze at 9:41 p.m., one frame of him reaching for the fryer basket, and then nothing, like he'd been erased. They questioned us for hours, but eventually concluded Jamal must have walked out the back door and wandered off, maybe caught a ride, maybe something else. But we knew the truth, even if no one believed us. Raleigh quit the next day. Bree transferred to a different location 2 towns over. Tina stopped showing up for shifts, and Luis told me in a shaking voice that sometimes, late at night, he swore he could hear someone whispering his name when he passed the closed restaurant. And 2 weeks after Jamal vanished, the McDonald's shut down temporarily for renovations, but it never reopened. They fenced it off, boarded the windows, and eventually tore it down. But here's the part I never told anyone. Not Raleigh, not Bree, not the police, not even my mom. 2 nights after everything happened, I woke up at 3:12 a.m. to the same soft tap 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 I'd heard for weeks before the incident. But this time, it was coming from outside my bedroom window. And when I slowly pulled back the curtain, expecting maybe a tree branch or a raccoon, I saw 3 silhouettes standing at the edge of our yard, perfectly still, perfectly silent. And even in the dark, I recognized the shape of their coats, their stiff posture, their unnatural stillness, and one of them raised a hand, not to wave, but to point directly at me. And I swear, I felt my breath freeze in my throat as the same man's voice from the restaurant whispered, not aloud but inside my head, "We are not finished." And that's when I finally understood. They hadn't come for the restaurant or the room or the land. They had come looking for someone specific, someone tied to a debt older than the building itself, and somehow, for reasons I still don't understand, that someone was me. I was 17 when everything happened, back in the fall of 2011, the kind of wet Pacific Northwest fall where the rain feels like it sinks into your bones even when you're inside. And at the time, I was working evenings at a McDonald's off Redwood Highway in a small place called Timber Grove, Oregon. A nothing town people only stopped in for gas or fries. And my name's Leo Hargrove. And I remember every second of that month, like it's stuck on repeat in my head. And sometimes I wish I could forget it, but I can't. Because once you see something that shouldn't exist but does, it never leaves you. Not really. Not in the daytime, and not when it's pitch black at 3 a.m. and you swear you hear something moving down the hall. Anyway, I was working part-time to save for a crappy used Honda I'd been eyeing on Craigslist, and my manager, a short, fast-talking woman named Trina, always said I had good vibes for customer service, which was her way of saying I didn't yell back at drunk people. And on the crew, those nights we had Bryson on grill, loud, goofy, always blasting Tupac under his breath, and Lacey on drive-through, a sweet girl who had this habit of chewing the straw from her iced tea like she was trying to fight with it. And I mention them because all 3 of us saw it, just at different times, in different ways, but we all saw something no normal person should ever see inside a damn fast food restaurant. The first night it started, nothing felt scary yet. Everything felt normal, boring even. The kind of slow shift where the fry oil pops louder than the customers talk. And I came in around 4:02 p.m., clocked in, tied my apron, and started stocking sauces while Trina yelled from the back, "Leo, make sure we got extra BBQ tonight. DoorDash been running my ass dry." And I yelled back, "Yes, ma'am, I'm on it." And she laughed. "Don't call me ma'am, makes me feel 90. And things felt totally, painfully normal. Around 5:30 p.m., this storm rolled in from the mountains. Big, dark, heavy clouds that made the whole parking lot look like it was tinted, and the lights inside flickered once, then twice, and Bryson yelled from the grill, "Yo, the hell was that? We paying the electric bill or what?" And Trina shouted back, "Relax, backup generator'll kick in if anything drops." And for a second, we all just shrugged it off. But around 6:12 p.m., the doorbell chimed and this man walked in. Tall, really tall, like basketball height but skinnier than should have been possible. Like he'd been stretched, wearing this long gray coat that hung almost to his ankles, and his clothes were soaked like he'd been standing in the rain for hours. And I remember saying my usual line, "Hey, welcome in. You can order whenever you're ready." And he didn't say anything, didn't nod, didn't clear his throat, didn't move, just stood near the entrance with his head slightly bent forward like he was trying to listen to something behind the wall. I tried again. "Sir, you okay?" And that's when he turned his head, Not all at once like a normal person, but slow, like each degree of motion was being forced. And I swear to God, his face didn't look right. The skin was pale like copy paper and too smooth. No wrinkles, no blemishes, no facial hair, just blank and stretched. And his eyes were the worst part. They weren't white and they weren't yellow. They were this dull, faded gray like old cement left in the rain, completely drained of life. Lacey whispered behind me, "Leo, what the hell?" And Bryson muttered, "Nah, man, no, I'm not messing with that." But Trina, being Trina, stepped forward and said, "Sir, if you're not ordering, I'm gonna have to ask you to step aside." But he didn't move, didn't react, just tilted his head again like he was trying to measure us or listen to something only he could hear. And then the lights flickered again, harder this time, enough for the soda machine to click off and restart with a hiss. And when the lights steadied, the man was gone, not walked out, not moved to a table, just gone, like someone had cut him out of the air. Lacey gasped and said, "Dude, where did he go?" And Trina tried to act tough, but her hands were shaking when she grabbed the counter, and she muttered, "He probably left while the lights went out." But even she didn't sound convinced. Later that night, around 10:40, after the lobby closed and we were doing our final clean, I went to take the garbage out through the side door facing the alley, and I swear on my life, when I stepped outside, he was standing at the far end of the alley where the dumpster light barely touched. Same coat, same height, same blank face, just standing there, hands limp at his sides, water dripping off him even though the rain had stopped 2 hours ago. I froze, and I mean completely froze. My brain just emptied out, and all I could whisper was, "No, no, no, no." And he didn't move toward me, didn't run, didn't blink, just stood there watching me even though he had no expression. And as I backed up slowly toward the door, I whispered, "I'm just gonna go inside, dude. Don't follow me." And right as I grabbed the handle, he took one slow step forward, and I swear, the gravel under his foot didn't crunch, didn't shift, no sound at all, like he wasn't touching the ground. And I yanked the door open so hard it slammed against the wall, and I stumbled inside, shouting, "Trina, he's out there!" And she came rushing over, but when she looked through the little rectangle window, nothing was there. Not a shadow, not a footprint, not a drop of water. That was the first night. The next night was worse. I didn't want to come back, but my paycheck depended on it. So I sucked it up, came in at 4 p.m. sharp, and tried not to look at the windows every 5 seconds. But around 7:05 p.m. a family came in, a mom, a dad, and a little boy around 8, and they sat near the window by the play place. And I heard the boy ask, "Mom, who's that man?" And she said, "What man?" And the kid pointed to the glass, to the reflection, and said, "The tall one with the long arms." And my stomach dropped, because when I looked at the glass, I saw something behind our reflections, something tall and pale standing near the bathroom hallway. But when I turned around, the hall was empty. Later, around 8-ish, Bryson refused to go change the oil in the fryers alone, kept saying, "Yo, nah, I keep seeing something tall by the freezer door and I'm not trying to die tonight." And Trina yelled at him, but she didn't send him alone. She sent us both, and the whole time we were back there, we heard this soft tapping on the metal wall, like someone dragging fingers slowly along it. And every time we said, "Hello, who's there?" it stopped. But the worst part came 3 nights later, on a slow Wednesday, when Trina had gone home early with a migraine. And it was just me and Lacey up front while Bryson handled the kitchen. And around 9:26 p.m. a customer came in, a teenage girl, maybe 16, crying, shaking, saying, "Can I use your phone? Someone's following me." And she pointed toward the highway where the street lights flickered, and I asked, "What did he look like?" And she whispered, "Tall, no face." And I swear my whole body went numb. We let her call her dad, and he came within 5 minutes, frantic, hugging her tight. And when they left, she pointed again and said, "He's still there." But her dad shook his head and said, "Sweetheart, ain't nobody there," but we could all feel something watching. Around closing time, at 11:52 p.m., the power cut out completely, pitch black, and we all screamed. Even Bryson and Lacey grabbed my arm so hard her nails dug in, and we heard footsteps, long, slow, deliberate, coming from the bathroom hallway, steps that didn't sound like normal steps, more like something heavy dragging itself but staying perfectly balanced. And Bryson whispered, "We're gonna die, man. We're gonna actually die in a McDonald's, bro." And I whispered, shut up, don't move." And we all backed up behind the counter, trying to breathe quietly, and the footsteps stopped right around the corner by the ice cream machine, and we heard this faint whispering like someone breathing words without actually speaking, this dry scraping sound like air against bone, and then the emergency lights flickered on, just 5 seconds of dim red, just enough for us to see something tall ducking behind the hallway wall, like it moved impossibly fast to avoid the light. And Lacey started crying hard, saying, "Leo, I want to go home. I want to go home." And I whispered, we will, just don't look over there." But Bryson, dumb, brave Bryson, grabbed a metal tray and said, "I'm gonna scare it off, I swear." And he walked slowly toward the hallway, calling out, "Hey, I ain't scared of you." But his voice cracked on the last word. He turned the corner, and we heard him gasp. Just one sharp inhale, and the tray clattered to the floor. And when we ran over, he was standing alone, staring down the empty hall, shaking uncontrollably, saying, "He was right there. He was right there, Leo. He leaned down like he was gonna touch my face." And he couldn't finish. After that night, none of us wanted to come back, but we needed the job, so we kept working. But every shift felt like walking into a trap, like something was already inside waiting. Customers kept reporting a tall man standing near the play place or near the entrance or behind the counter when they went to refill drinks. And Trina tried to ignore it, but she stopped going anywhere alone, always dragging one of us with her even to the office. Eventually, everything blew up on a Saturday night 2 weeks later, when a mom started screaming near the play place, shouting, "Where's my daughter?" And we all ran over, and she said her kid had gone into the tunnels and hadn't come out. And when we went inside to look, the tunnels felt wrong, too quiet, too cold. And halfway up, I heard this soft sound behind me, like someone exhaling right into my ear. And I crawled out as fast as I could, yelling, "She's not in here!" And the mom collapsed crying, until suddenly the little girl crawled out from under the slide, shaking, whispering, "He was in there. I heard him. He told me not to scream." And when Trina asked, "Who, sweetie? Who did you see?" the girl whispered, "The tall one with the smooth face." And that was it. Trina shut the play place permanently. Over the next week, lights kept flickering, alarms kept going off, timers malfunctioned, the freezer door kept swinging open even when latched, and one night the bathroom mirror cracked right down the center like it had been hit from the inside. The final night we ever worked there together was the worst. At 12:03 a.m. after closing, while we were mopping, every soda machine button started dispensing at once. Syrup, water, ice, flooding the floor, and Bryson screamed, Nope, I'm done." And right then, the tall man stepped out from the dark hallway, fully visible now, arms impossibly long, fingers almost reaching the tiles, body slightly bent, like bones weren't connected right, and all three of us screamed so loud I lost my voice. And he leaned forward like his spine didn't work right, like his bones were bending the wrong way, and his head tilted with that same awful slowness. And the lights flickered off, then on, and he was suddenly closer, too close, just a few feet away. and the air got so cold I could see my breath, and his hand lifted like he wanted to touch my face, and something in me snapped. I bolted for the exit, dragging Lacey with me, Bryson right behind us, and we ran out into the freezing night, not stopping until we reached the far end of the parking lot. And when we turned back, the entire building was dark. No lights, no movement, no sound. We didn't go back inside. We didn't even clock out. The franchise shut down 2 weeks later due to electrical issues. But we all knew the truth, even if we never said it out loud. Years have passed. I moved states. Lacey got married. Bryson refuses to talk about Timber Grove at all, and Trina moved to Arizona. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone and everything's quiet, I swear I hear that slow dragging sound down the hall, like something tall is looking for me, like it finally found where I live. And I pray every night that I'm wrong, that he stayed behind in that dead restaurant. But deep down, I know he didn't, because once he looks at you, really looks at you, he never stops following. I grew up listening to folks say that nothing bad ever really happens in little American towns except boredom and gossip, and I used to believe that. Used to think my hometown of Cold River, Missouri was just another sleepy dot between highways, until the night shift at the McDonald's off Route 86 showed me everything wrong. Hiding behind places meant for comfort. And I swear to you, I'm telling it straight because I don't even care if people think I'm crazy anymore. Not after what I saw and what followed me home. I was 19 then, working nights because I needed the money and because my mom had fallen sick and I was trying to cover bills while my older cousin Griff said he'd watch her at night. And the McDonald's felt like the only place that wouldn't judge a kid like me. The kind with worn sneakers, a busted old Honda, and too much worry in his chest. And on my first week, the night manager, a tired woman named Jolene with a cigarette voice, told me, "Kid, this place gets weird after midnight, so don't go wandering off." And I laughed because I thought she meant drunk folks or meth heads, normal stuff in our area. But she looked me dead in the face and said, "Nah, I mean weird." Before turning back to the fry station, the building itself stood just beyond a dead stretch of trees and an abandoned car wash, and old-timers swore that land used to be part of a mining camp where folks went missing back in the 40s. But Cold River had a story like that for every damn corner. So I brushed it off, and still, even before things really kicked off, there were clues, little ones, like how the air vents in the kids' area rattled even when the AC was off, or how the play tunnel, yeah, this McDonald's somehow still had one, seemed darker than any space made of transparent plastic had a right to be, or how sometimes I'd hear a soft tapping from inside the slide after close. I'd mention it to coworkers and they'd roll their eyes, except for a cook named Val, who said quietly one night while restocking sauces, "You hear it too? I told Jolene about that tapping once. She told me, don't feed it attention." And when I asked what it meant, she just shook her head and said, "Just don't go near the play place alone, man. I'm serious." And I thought she was messing with me until the night everything cracked open. But before that, let me explain the night the first thing happened, because if I skip the start, it won't make sense why everything escalated like it did. It was a Friday around 1:30 a.m., a storm rolling in, wind slapping the windows, and we only had one customer left, an older man in a blue flannel jacket who kept staring at the play place like he expected someone to crawl out of it. And when I asked him, "Sir, you need anything? We're closing the lobby soon," he just muttered, "Ain't right, that corner, never been right," and hurried out, leaving his fries untouched. I was sweeping near the play area when I heard someone whisper, not loud, not even clear, just a faint, hey, like a kid trying to get their parents' attention, and I froze because no kids were in the building. And I looked at Jolene and said, "You hear something?" And she didn't even glance up from her paperwork, just said, "Ignore it, River." Yeah, that's my name, River. I should have said that sooner. So I swallowed my nerves and went to empty the trash near the play structure, and that's when I saw the handprint. Small, but weirdly long-fingered, smeared across the inside of the tunnel window, like something had pressed its face against the plastic and pulled away. I wiped it off, telling myself maybe a kid from earlier left it, but the smudge felt fresh, like warm, like actual body heat warm, and my skin crawled because plastic doesn't hold heat like that, and I backed up, telling myself I was overthinking. But then 2 nights later, the real hell started. It was close to 3 a.m., rain hammering the roof, the store quiet except for the fryer hum, and Val said she needed to grab a mop bucket near the stockroom, so she asked me, "Can you go check the kids' area?" I thought I saw movement, and I groaned because nobody liked going back there, but I nodded and walked across the empty lobby. When I reached the play place, I saw the damn slide shift, actually shift, like something heavy had moved inside it, and I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the wind, maybe the air pressure, but then I heard breathing, slow, raspy breathing, echoing from inside the tunnel, and I called out, "Hey, if someone's messing around in there, we're closed, come out." And for a moment there was silence. And then the breathing stopped, and a voice whispered, clearer this time, "River," dragging my name like it was tasting it, and everything in my spine locked up, my hands shaking so bad my phone slipped from my pocket, and I backed away saying, "Nope, nope, hell no." And I ran to the kitchen and said to Jolene and Val, "There's someone in the tunnel." But Jolene didn't even look surprised. She just cursed under her breath and said, "Not again," and grabbed the keys to the back office. I followed her, heart pounding, asking, "What do you mean, not again? What is that?" And Jolene sighed like she'd been holding this in for years and told me, "A long time ago, back before corporate remodeled, a kid went missing here. Little boy named Charlie. They never found him. Parents said he liked hiding in the tunnels. And then after that, people started hearing him. Not a ghost, not exactly, more like something that learned how to sound like him." And I said, "That's bullshit." But my voice cracked because I didn't believe it was bullshit anymore. She told me they'd called corporate, gotten inspectors, even sealed the play area for a year, but accidents kept happening. Kids going missing during rush hours, then reappearing in places they weren't supposed to reach physically. Workers hearing whispers, shadows in the tubes, scratches appearing on the inside plastic that nobody could explain, cold spots in the warm months, and according to Jolene, corporate chalked it up to structural issues, opened it back up to keep revenue flowing. And she shrugged, saying, "We can't close it, River, but we don't go near it alone." And I wanted to quit right then, but I needed the money, and Griff needed help, and Mom's meds weren't cheap. So I stayed. Over the next few weeks, things escalated. Objects went missing. Timers reset themselves. The soda machine would dispense drinks on its own, like invisible fingers pushing the lever. And sometimes during breaks, I'd hear that whisper again, always from the direction of the play place. "Reaver, come play." And Val started leaving early, on nights she felt, the shift, as she called it. And I didn't understand until one night, around 2 a.m., the lights flickered hard enough that one of the bulbs popped, and the entire building went ice cold, like someone opened a freezer door right behind me, and the vents started rattling like something was crawling through them fast. Too fast to be human. I yelled for Jolene, but before she could answer, the ball pit, a pit we barely let kids use anymore, began sinking like something massive had dropped into it, and the plastic bottom bulged downward as if something was pushing from underneath. And I swear on everything, I saw a pale hand break through the top layer for half a second before sinking back down. I screamed, stumbled backward, knocked over a chair and bolted for the kitchen while yelling, "We need to get out, now, now." And Jolene grabbed her bag and keys and said, "Okay, everyone out." And we rushed to the exit, but before we reached the door, we heard the slide groan like metal under strain. And then something crawled out, fast, jerky, limbs bending wrong, too thin to be a grown person, but too large to be a child, its skin a pale gray like wet paper, its hair stringy and stuck to its skull, and its eyes, God, its eyes weren't right, too round, too reflective like someone carved them out of porcelain and jammed them in. It crawled halfway out of the slide, twisting its neck in a broken angle as it stared at me. And then it smiled a stretched, trembling grin and whispered, "Play with me, River," in a voice that sounded like three voices layered together. One child, one adult, one something else. Val screamed bloody murder and sprinted outside while Jolene shoved me through the exit, locking the door behind us, and we ran to the parking lot, rain soaking us, thunder cracking, all of us shaking and gasping, and Jolene said, "I told you this place gets weird." And I yelled, "Weird? That was not weird, Jolene. That thing talked to me." But she was already dialing corporate, who apparently told her not to file a police report because no physical threat was confirmed. Absolute insanity. I quit on the spot, but quitting didn't fix a damn thing because that night when I went home, something followed me. I was trying to sleep in the living room to keep an ear on my mom when I heard a soft tapping on the window, rhythmic, light, like a child knocking gently, and my stomach dropped because it matched the tapping I had heard inside the slide. And when I looked toward the glass, I swear I saw the faint outline of long fingers sliding down the pane as if testing it. I froze, praying it was a dream, but then a whisper seeped through the window seal, soft, stretched, "River, let me in." And I backed away slowly, hands shaking so violently I knocked over a lamp. And the moment it crashed, the whisper stopped, the tapping stopped, the shadow vanished. I didn't sleep at all that night, and the next morning I called Val, who said in a shaky voice, "It followed you too?" "It followed me last year until I stopped answering it." And I asked her how to make it stop, and she said, "Don't talk to it, don't acknowledge it. It wants attention, it feeds on it. It's not a ghost, it's something older, something stuck between places and the tunnels. They're like a door to it." And I told her I was leaving Cold River as soon as I saved enough. But before I could even plan that, I heard my mom calling me weakly from her room that night. And when I went to check on her, she was sitting upright, her eyes unfocused, and she whispered in a voice that wasn't hers, "Someone's knocking, River. Don't you hear him?" And every hair on my body rose because my mom had never heard a thing before that day. I shut her door, paced the hallway whispering, "Please go away, please not my mom." Trying not to cry, trying not to listen as soft tapping echoed from the back porch, steady, patient, almost curious. It went on for hours, and when it finally stopped, I cracked the blinds just a hair and saw nothing but wet grass and darkness. And that's when I realized this thing wasn't tied to the restaurant. It was tied to whoever paid it attention, and I had, and now it wanted more. The next week, I didn't sleep more than an hour at a time, jumping at every creak, every shadow. And one night while driving home from the pharmacy, I saw something crouched near the dumpsters behind a closed grocery store, thin, pale, jerking its head toward me as if recognizing me, and I sped home so fast I nearly blew a stop sign. I started researching weird folklore, creatures, spirits, alternate reality things, anything that might explain this, but nothing matched except old stories about mimics that haunted liminal kid spaces, places meant for innocence that got twisted by neglect, things that pretended to be children to lure more in, but none of the stories said how to get rid of them only that acknowledging them keeps them tethered. I stopped answering the whispers, stopped looking at windows, stopped reacting to tapping, and over months it faded, slowly, painfully, until the noises died and the shadows stopped appearing, and I thought maybe I'd made it through. I moved out, took my mom somewhere safer, left Cold River behind, but trauma sticks like tar. And even now, years later, last week when I walked past a McDonald's in another state entirely, just trying to grab a coffee before work, I heard it again from the direction of the play tunnel, soft, playful, stretched thin like static. River, ready to play again? And I didn't even look, didn't breathe, just walked out and drove until my hands stopped shaking. So if you ever hear breathing in a kid's tunnel, or soft tapping from inside a plastic slide, or a voice whispering your name when no one is around, don't answer, don't look, don't feed it attention. Because once it notices you, once it picks you, it doesn't stop. It just waits and waits and waits for someone new to play.